Welcome, dear listener. As you settle into the comfort of your bed tonight, let these gentle stories of God's protection wash over you like a warm blanket. These are tales of divine care, of heavenly guardianship, and of the deep peace that comes from knowing you are held safely in loving hands. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let these words carry you into restful sleep, wrapped in the assurance of God's unfailing protection. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a vast expanse of golden sand and scorching heat. 2 million souls had left the familiar shores of Egypt behind, stepping into the unknown wilderness with nothing but faith and the promise that they would not walk alone. Moses stood at the edge of the camp, his weathered hands shielding his eyes from the morning sun as he gazed toward the horizon. The people were stirring, preparing for another day of journey. But something was different about this morning. Something wonderful and mysterious was about to unfold. As the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in soft pastels, a cloud began to form above the camp. But this was no ordinary cloud. It moved with purpose, positioning itself directly over the tabernacle at the center of their community. The cloud was luminous, soft white tinged with silver, and it pulsed gently with an inner light that spoke of divine presence. Children pointed upward with wonder-filled eyes, while their parents watched in reverent awe. This was their sign, their guide, their protection made visible. The cloud grew larger and more defined as the morning progressed, casting a blessed shadow over the entire camp. In the scorching desert heat, this shade was more precious than gold. Families gathered beneath its cooling presence, feeling the temperature drop by precious degrees that meant the difference between comfort and suffering. Elderly grandmothers smiled with relief. Babies stopped crying from the heat, and even the livestock seemed to sense the divine provision hovering above them. Moses received the word from the Lord that morning. The cloud would be their guide by day, leading them step by step toward the promised land. When it moved, they would break camp and follow. When it settled, they would rest. Never again would they wonder which direction to take or fear becoming lost in the trackless desert. Their path was secured by the very presence of God Himself, visible and constant above them. As the day wore on and the sun climbed higher in the sky, the cloud remained steadfast. It filtered the harsh rays, turning the burning desert sun into gentle, manageable warmth. Children played in its shadow while their mothers prepared meals, and the men tended to the daily tasks of camp life with energy they hadn't felt since leaving Egypt. The cloud was not just guidance, it was provision, protection, and comfort all woven together in one miraculous manifestation. But the true wonder was yet to come. As evening approached and the desert began to cool, something extraordinary happened. The soft white cloud began to change, its edges taking on a warm golden glow that deepened as the sun set. Slowly, gradually, the entire cloud transformed into a pillar of fire, a column of gentle flames that reached from earth to heaven. The fire was not consuming or frightening, but warm and inviting, like the coziest hearth on the coldest night. The pillar of fire illuminated the entire camp with a soft amber light. Families could see to continue their evening activities, children could play safely, and no one stumbled in darkness. The fire provided just enough light to create an atmosphere of peace and security, neither too bright to keep anyone awake, nor so dim as to leave anyone in shadow. It was perfect light, divine light, light that whispered of safety and care. Night watchmen found their duties transformed from anxious vigilance to peaceful meditation. Instead of straining their eyes into impenetrable darkness, wondering what dangers might lurk beyond the camp's borders, they walked their rounds in the gentle glow of heaven's own lamplight. The fire above them was better than 1,000 torches, more reliable than any human guard, and more comforting than any earthly security. Throughout that first night under the fiery pillar, an amazing thing happened. The usual desert sounds of prowling predators, the howls and growls that typically sent chills down travelers' spines, fell silent. It was as if an invisible barrier surrounded the camp, keeping all danger at bay. Wild animals seemed to recognize the divine presence and gave the camp a wide berth. What had been a vulnerable group of refugees became a protected city under heaven's own watchful eye. Mothers tucked their children into bed that night with words they had never been able to speak before. "Sleep peacefully, little one. God's light is watching over us. Nothing can harm you here." And the children did sleep peacefully, more soundly than they ever had in Egypt, wrapped in blankets and the knowledge that the Creator of the universe was personally standing guard over their rest. The adults, too, found a quality of sleep they had forgotten existed. No longer did they lie awake worrying about tomorrow's direction or tonight's dangers. The pillar of fire burned steadily above them, a constant reminder that they were not alone, not forgotten, not abandoned to their own devices in the hostile wilderness. They were personally guided, personally protected, personally loved by the God who had delivered them from slavery. Night after night, the pattern continued. Day after day, the cloud provided shade and guidance. The people began to understand that this was not a temporary miracle, but a permanent provision. God had not just rescued them from Egypt, he had committed himself to seeing them safely home. The pillar of cloud and fire became as much a part of their daily routine as sunrise and sunset, as reliable as breathing, as comforting as a parent's presence in a child's bedroom. Years passed in the wilderness, and still the pillar remained. Through sandstorms and scorching heat, through cold desert nights and the challenges of daily survival, the cloud by day and fire by night never failed them. It became the one constant in their ever-changing circumstances, the anchor point around which their entire community organized itself. Where the pillar went, they followed. Where it stopped, they made camp. It was that simple, that secure, that perfect. The pillar taught them lessons they would carry for generations. It showed them that divine protection is not just about preventing disaster, but about providing guidance for every step of life's journey. It demonstrated that God's care extends to the practical details of daily existence, from the need for shade in the heat to the comfort of light in darkness. Most importantly, it revealed that divine protection is personal, visible, and utterly dependable. As the Israelites lay down to sleep each night under that gentle fire, they were learning what it meant to rest in perfect security. They were discovering that true peace comes not from the absence of danger, but from the presence of a protector greater than any threat. The pillar above them was more than light. It was love made visible, care made tangible, faithfulness burning bright against the desert sky. The memory of those nights would echo through history, a reminder to every generation that followed of what divine protection looks like. It appears when needed, stays as long as necessary, and never fails those who trust in it. The cloud by day and fire by night became a symbol etched into the hearts of God's people, a promise that no matter how dark the wilderness or how uncertain the path, they need never journey alone. Centuries later, in the small hill town of Dothan, another story of divine protection would unfold, this one teaching that heavenly guardians are always present, even when invisible to human eyes. The prophet Elisha had been living quietly in this peaceful community, ministering to the people and seeking God's voice in prayer and solitude. His reputation as a man of God had spread throughout the region, bringing both blessing and, unfortunately, unwanted attention from those who opposed his message. The king of Syria had been troubled by mysterious intelligence leaks. Every time he planned a military campaign against Israel, somehow the Israelites seemed to know his strategies in advance. His secret plans were being revealed to the enemy before he could put them into action. In frustration, he called his advisors together, suspecting a spy among his closest confidants. "Which of you is betraying our plans to the king of Israel?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the palace halls. One of his servants, perhaps hoping to deflect suspicion from the royal court, spoke up with information that would change everything. "My lord, it is not any of us who reveals your plans. It is Elisha, the prophet who lives in Israel. He tells the king of Israel even the words that you speak in your bedroom." The king's eyes flashed with understanding and anger. If this prophet could somehow know his most private conversations, then he had found the source of his military failures. "Find out where he is," the king commanded. "We will capture this prophet and put an end to his interference." It didn't take long for the Syrian intelligence network to locate Elisha. Reports came back that he was staying in Dothan, a small, relatively undefended town in the hills. The king saw his opportunity. He would send a strong force to surround the town at night and capture the prophet at dawn. The Syrian army moved under cover of darkness, a formidable force of horses, chariots, and soldiers. They were elite troops, experienced in night operations and siege warfare. As they took their positions around the sleeping town, they felt confident in their mission. What resistance could a small hill community offer against such overwhelming force? The prophet would be in their hands by sunrise, and their king's military problems would be solved. Elisha's servant, a young man who had been faithfully serving the prophet for several years, was an early riser. As was his custom, he climbed to the rooftop of their lodging just as the first light of dawn began to brighten the eastern sky. He intended to draw water from the well and prepare breakfast before his master awoke. But as he looked out over the town, his blood ran cold and his heart began to race with terror. Everywhere he looked, he saw the glint of armour and weapons in the morning light. Syrian chariots formed a complete circle around Dothan, their horses pawing the ground and snorting in the cool air. Soldiers stood at attention in perfect formation, their spears creating a forest of deadly points aimed at the town. The young man had never seen such a massive military force, and it was clear they had come for one purpose: to capture his master. Rushing down from the roof, the servant burst into Elisha's room, his voice trembling with panic. "Oh, my lord, what shall we do? The Syrian army has surrounded the city. There are chariots and horses and soldiers everywhere. We are trapped." He wrung his hands, his mind racing through impossible scenarios of escape. How could they possibly get away from such overwhelming numbers? Where could they hide? What hope did they have against trained warriors? But Elisha's response was not what the servant expected. The prophet remained calm, his face peaceful and untroubled by the news. There was no panic in his eyes, no frantic planning for escape, no despair at their apparently hopeless situation. Instead, Elisha looked at his servant with gentle compassion and spoke words that seemed to make no sense given their circumstances. "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." The servant looked at his master in bewilderment. Had the old prophet lost his mind? They were two men against an entire army. How could those who were with them possibly outnumber the Syrian forces surrounding the town? He could count their allies on one hand, and none of them were warriors. The math seemed terrifyingly clear, and it was not in their favour. Seeing his servant's confusion and continued fear, Elisha did something that would change the young man's understanding of reality forever. The prophet bowed his head and prayed, but not for escape or deliverance in the way his servant might have expected. Instead, he prayed for revelation, for opened eyes, for his servant to see what was already there. "Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." What happened next transformed not only that moment, but the young man's entire relationship with faith and fear. As Elisha finished his prayer, something shifted in the servant's vision, as if a veil had been lifted from his eyes, or a fog had suddenly cleared from the landscape. He looked toward the hills surrounding Dothan, the same hills he had seen filled with enemy forces just moments before, and gasped in wonder and amazement. The hills were indeed full of forces, but not just Syrian chariots and soldiers. Covering every slope, positioned on every ridge, standing in perfect formation throughout the surrounding mountains, was an army unlike anything the young man had ever imagined. Horses and chariots of fire filled the landscape as far as the eye could see, their riders shining with celestial light, their presence radiating power and protection that made the Syrian army look small and insignificant by comparison. These were not earthly warriors, but heavenly ones, angels of God stationed as guardians around his servant. Their chariots blazed with holy fire, their armour gleamed with light brighter than polished silver, and their faces showed the calm confidence of those who serve the King of Kings. They had been there all along, invisible to human eyes but absolutely real, absolutely present, and absolutely ready to defend the prophet of God. The servant's fear melted away like snow in summer heat, replaced by awe and wonder at the magnificent sight before him. Now he understood what Elisha had meant. Those who were with them truly were more than those who were against them. The Syrian army, though impressive by earthly standards, was vastly outnumbered by the heavenly host that surrounded them. What had seemed like a hopeless situation was actually a demonstration of divine protection beyond imagination. As the morning sun climbed higher, painting the hills in golden light, the angelic army remained visible to the servant's newly opened eyes. He watched in fascination as the celestial warriors maintained their positions, a protective wall of heavenly power encircling not just Elisha, but the entire town of Dothan. Every man, woman, and child sleeping peacefully in their beds was under the guardianship of these mighty defenders, though they knew nothing of the battle being waged in the spiritual realm around them. The Syrian soldiers below seemed unaware of the angelic presence, going about their preparations for capturing the prophet, with no idea that they were themselves surrounded by a far superior force. They checked their weapons, fed their horses, and waited for orders, confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. But their confidence was based on incomplete information. They could see only the physical realm, blind to the spiritual reality that would determine the true outcome of this confrontation. Elisha watched the Syrian army with compassion rather than fear. These were not evil men, but soldiers following orders, unaware that they were attempting to oppose the will of the Almighty. The prophet prayed again, this time not for opened eyes, but for closed ones. Strike this people, I pray, with blindness. His prayer was not for permanent harm, but for temporary confusion that would allow for a peaceful resolution to what could have been a violent confrontation. Immediately, a strange disorientation fell upon the Syrian forces. The landscape they had studied carefully in the pre-dawn darkness now seemed unfamiliar and confusing. Landmarks they had used to navigate appeared to have shifted, and the town they had surrounded seemed to have vanished or transformed into something unrecognizable. Officers called out confused orders as their carefully planned siege began to fall apart in bewildering chaos. Taking advantage of their confusion, Elisha walked boldly out of the town toward the milling soldiers. To them, he appeared as just another local inhabitant, and when he offered to guide them to find the man they were seeking, they gratefully accepted his help. The prophet led the entire Syrian army away from Dothan, walking calmly among armed men who had come to capture him, protected by an invisible army they could not see, and guided by a divine plan they could not understand. When they reached Samaria, Elisha prayed once more, and the soldiers' sight was restored. They found themselves not victorious captors, but confused prisoners in the heart of their enemy's territory, surrounded by Israelite forces and completely at the mercy of the very people they had planned to attack. But instead of executing them or holding them hostage, the king of Israel, at Elisha's gentle urging, gave them food and water and sent them home in peace. The Syrian raids against Israel ceased after that day. The soldiers returned to their king with a story so extraordinary that it changed their nation's entire approach to the prophet and his people. They had learned that some battles cannot be won by force of arms, that some protections cannot be overcome by human strategy, and that the servant of the living God walks under a covering of divine care that makes earthly armies seem like children playing with wooden swords. For the young servant, life was never the same after that morning on the rooftop. He had learned to see beyond the visible, to trust in protections that eyes cannot detect, to find peace in the midst of apparent danger because he knew that heavenly guardians are always present, always watching, always ready to defend those who belong to God. The memory of that angelic army would comfort him through every trial for the rest of his life, a living reminder that divine protection is real, present, and more powerful than any earthly threat. This truth echoes through time, reaching into every age and every circumstance where God's people find themselves surrounded by overwhelming opposition. Like the servant in Dothan, we often see only the forces arrayed against us, missing the far greater army of heaven that stands ready to defend and protect. The angels are still there, still watching, still maintaining their posts around those who trust in the Lord's care. In another time, in another place, this same truth would be demonstrated in a way that would capture imaginations for millennia to come. The great city of Babylon gleamed like a jewel in the desert, its hanging gardens and towering walls a testament to human ambition and earthly power. Within its magnificent palaces lived men from many nations, some brought as captives, others drawn by opportunity, all subject to the absolute authority of kings who claimed divinity for themselves. Among these residents was a man whose quiet dignity and unwavering faith had set him apart from the moment he arrived as a young captive decades earlier. Daniel had risen through the ranks of Babylon's government, not through political maneuvering or compromise, but through consistent excellence and unshakable integrity. His wisdom in interpreting dreams and his skill in administration had made him valuable to successive kings, but it was his steadfast devotion to the God of Israel that would ultimately place him in mortal danger. King Darius had recently taken control of the Babylonian Empire and had reorganized its administration, placing Daniel in a position of such high authority that jealous officials began plotting against him. They watched his daily routine, studied his habits, and searched for any fault they could use to bring about his downfall. But Daniel's life was above reproach. His work was excellent, his dealings honest, his relationships honorable. They could find no corruption, no negligence, no weakness to exploit. Finally, the conspirators realized that if they were to trap Daniel, it would have to be in connection with his religious practices. The old man prayed 3 times daily, always facing toward Jerusalem, always faithful to the customs of his people. This devotion, they decided, would be the means of his destruction. They approached King Darius with a proposal disguised as a demonstration of loyalty to the crown. "O King Darius, live forever," they said with false reverence. "All the administrators of the kingdom have consulted together and have agreed that you should establish a royal statute and enforce an injunction that anyone who petitions any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not pass away." Darius, flattered by what seemed like unanimous recognition of his divine status and unaware of the trap being set for his most trusted advisor, signed the decree into law. The conspirators smiled with satisfaction, knowing that Daniel's faithful prayer life would now inevitably lead to his death. According to the unchangeable law of the Medes and Persians, anyone who violated this edict would be thrown to the lions, and they knew Daniel would never abandon his daily prayers to the God of Israel. They were right. When Daniel learned of the new law, he went home, opened the windows of his upper room toward Jerusalem and prayed just as he had done 3 times every day for decades. He made no attempt to hide his prayers or modify his routine. His faith was not something to be practiced in secret when convenient, but a defining characteristic of his life that remained constant regardless of external pressures or threats. The conspirators were waiting and watching. As soon as Daniel knelt in prayer, they hurried to the king with their accusation. "Did you not sign an injunction that any man who petitions any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days, shall be cast into the den of lions?" When Darius confirmed the law, they revealed their trap. Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the injunction which you signed, but keeps making his petition 3 times a day. The king's heart sank as he realized what had happened. He had been manipulated into condemning the most trustworthy man in his kingdom, and now the unchangeable law demanded Daniel's execution. Darius spent the entire day desperately searching for legal loopholes, consulting with lawyers and advisors, but the law of the Medes and Persians was absolute. As evening approached, the conspirators returned to remind him that no decree signed by the king could be changed. With a heavy heart, Darius ordered Daniel brought for sentencing. The old prophet came quietly, his face peaceful despite the terror that awaited him. As they walked toward the den where hungry lions paced behind iron gates, the king spoke words that revealed both his anguish and his hope. "Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." The lion's den was a deep pit carved into rock, with a narrow opening at the top that could be sealed with a heavy stone. The lions kept there were not fed regularly, making them fierce and dangerous to anyone who entered their domain. It was considered an absolutely certain form of execution, with no possibility of survival. Yet as Daniel was lowered into the den and the stone was rolled across the opening, an extraordinary peace settled over him. In the darkness below, surrounded by the golden eyes and low growls of predators, Daniel began to pray. Not prayers of desperation or pleas for deliverance, but prayers of trust and thanksgiving. He had served his God faithfully for over 70 years, through the fall of Jerusalem, through decades of exile, through the rise and fall of kings and kingdoms. His life had been marked by consistent divine protection and provision. Why should tonight be any different? As Daniel prayed in the depths of the lion's den, something remarkable began to happen. The restless pacing of the great cats gradually slowed. Their menacing growls faded to quiet breathing, and their predatory focus shifted to calm watchfulness. One by one, the lions settled onto the stone floor around Daniel, not as hunters stalking prey, but as gentle guardians surrounding a treasured friend. The largest lion, a magnificent male with a full mane, approached Daniel directly and lay down beside him, close enough that the prophet could feel the warmth radiating from the great cat's body in the cool underground chamber. Daniel reached out tentatively and found that he could rest his hand on the lion's massive head without fear. The beast that should have been his executioner had become his companion for the night. Throughout the long hours of darkness, Daniel experienced a peace that transcended understanding. Surrounded by creatures designed by nature to hunt and kill, he felt safer than he had in the palace chambers above. The lions formed a protective circle around him, their presence a living barrier against any other danger that might threaten him in the underground darkness. Their steady breathing became a rhythm of comfort, their warmth a source of physical ease in the cold stone chamber. Above ground, King Darius spent the most miserable night of his reign. Unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to find any entertainment that could distract him from thoughts of his condemned friend, the king paced his chambers until dawn. No music could soothe his troubled heart, no wine could ease his guilty conscience, no adviser could offer words of comfort. He had been forced to execute the best man in his kingdom, and the weight of that decision crushed his spirit. As the first light of dawn touched the palace walls, Darius could wait no longer. Despite the early hour, he hurried to the lion's den with a small group of attendants, his heart hammered with a mixture of dread and desperate hope as they approached the sealed opening. He had told Daniel that his God would deliver him, but did he truly believe it? Could any God, even the God of Israel, preserve a man in a den of hungry lions? Standing at the edge of the pit, Darius called down in a voice filled with anguish and longing, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" The king held his breath, straining to hear any response from the darkness below, hardly daring to hope for the impossible. From the depths of the den came a voice, clear and strong and filled with joy. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no wrong." Darius felt tears of relief and wonder streaming down his face as he called for ropes and men to lift Daniel from the den. When the elderly prophet emerged, not only was he unharmed, but his clothes were not torn, his hair was not dishevelled, and there was no smell of the den upon him. He looked as peaceful and dignified as if he had spent the night in the most comfortable palace chamber rather than in a pit with wild beasts. The king's joy quickly turned to righteous anger against those who had manipulated him into this situation. He ordered the conspirators and their families to be brought before him, and they met the very fate they had planned for Daniel. But when they were thrown into the lion's den, the beasts resumed their natural behaviour, proving that Daniel's preservation had been no accident of circumstance, but a deliberate act of divine intervention. Darius issued a new decree throughout his vast empire. "In every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and steadfast forever. His kingdom is the one which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions." Daniel continued to serve faithfully in the government, but his night in the lion's den became legendary throughout the known world. The story spread from palace to marketplace, from Babylon to the farthest reaches of the empire, carrying with it a message of hope for all who faced seemingly impossible circumstances. If God could shut the mouths of lions for his faithful servant, what situation was too desperate for divine intervention? For Daniel himself, the experience deepened his already profound trust in God's protection. He had felt the angel's presence in that underground chamber, had sensed the divine hand that gently closed the predator's jaws and turned their hearts from hunting to guarding. The lions had been transformed from instruments of death into ministers of comfort, their warm bodies providing heat in the cold stone chamber, their steady breathing a lullaby that helped him rest peacefully through the night. This same power that could transform the nature of wild beasts and turn a place of execution into a sanctuary of safety was at work in the world in ways both seen and unseen. Divine protection was not limited to dramatic rescues or miraculous interventions, but was woven into the very fabric of daily existence for those who trusted in the Lord's care. Like Daniel in the den, God's people could find rest and peace even in the most threatening circumstances, knowing that they were held safe in hands more powerful than any earthly danger. The truth that Daniel learned in the lion's den would echo across centuries and oceans, reaching even to the shores of a distant sea where other men would discover that the same God who commanded lions also commanded wind and waves. The Sea of Galilee stretched before them like a mirror of blue glass, its surface barely rippled by the gentle evening breeze. The fishing boats of the local fleet dotted the water, their crews preparing for a night's work in the rich fishing grounds that had sustained their families for generations. Among these boats was one that carried a unique crew, 12 men who had left their nets and tax tables and familiar routines to follow a teacher whose words carried authority unlike anything they had ever heard. They had watched him heal the sick, restore sight to the blind, and speak with wisdom that drew crowds from every corner of the region. But they were still learning to understand exactly who this Jesus was and what it meant to be in his presence. The day had been long and filled with teaching. Great crowds had gathered on the shoreline to hear Jesus speak, hanging on every word as he shared parables about the kingdom of heaven. His voice had carried clearly over the water as he taught from a boat just offshore, using the lake itself as his amphitheatre. Now, as evening shadows lengthened across the water, he suggested they cross to the other side for some rest and solitude. The disciples were experienced fishermen who knew these waters intimately. They understood the weather patterns, could read the signs in the sky, and were confident in their ability to navigate across the lake safely. The evening looked peaceful, with just enough breeze to fill their sail and speed their journey. They pushed off from shore with the easy confidence of men returning to their element, the familiar rhythm of boat and water and wind. Jesus, exhausted from the day's ministry, found a cushion in the stern of the boat and settled down for some much-needed rest. The gentle rocking of the boat on the calm water, combined with the soft whisper of wind in the sail, created the perfect conditions for sleep. Within minutes, he was resting deeply, his breathing steady and peaceful, despite the activity around him as the disciples managed the boat's movement across the lake. The crossing began as pleasantly as anyone could have wished. The disciples chatted quietly among themselves, sharing observations about the day's events and enjoying the cool evening air after the heat of the crowded shoreline. Some of them had been fishing these waters since childhood, and they pointed out landmarks along the shore, sharing stories and memories as the familiar coastline slipped past in the gathering dusk. But the Sea of Galilee was known for its sudden weather changes. Surrounded by hills and valleys that could channel wind in unexpected directions, the lake could transform from mirror-smooth calm to dangerous turbulence with little warning. The first sign of change was subtle, just a shift in the wind direction and a slight increase in its intensity. The more experienced fishermen noticed it first, glancing at each other with mild concern but no real alarm. Within minutes, however, the situation changed dramatically. What had begun as a gentle breeze became a driving wind that whipped the water into increasingly violent waves. The boat, which had been gliding smoothly across the calm surface, now found itself fighting against forces that grew stronger by the moment. The disciples trimmed the sail and adjusted their course, but the storm continued to intensify beyond anything they had expected. Soon they were in the grip of a full tempest, with waves crashing over the sides of the boat and wind howling with a fury that made communication difficult. These were not men easily frightened by rough weather. They had weathered many storms on this lake and knew how to handle difficult conditions. But this storm was different, more violent and sudden than anything in their experience, and it showed no signs of abating. Water began filling the boat faster than they could bail it out. The wind tore at their sail with such force that they had to take it down completely to prevent the mast from breaking. Waves that had started as gentle swells now towered above them, crashing down with enough force to knock men off their feet and threaten to swamp the boat entirely. What had begun as a peaceful evening cruise had become a fight for survival. Through it all, amazingly, Jesus continued to sleep. Despite the chaos around him, the shouting of the disciples, the crash of waves, and the howling of the wind, he rested peacefully on his cushion in the stern. His face showed no sign of stress or concern, no awareness of the danger that had his followers fighting desperately to keep their boat afloat. His peaceful slumber in the midst of the storm seemed almost impossible to his terrified companions. As the situation grew more desperate, the disciples finally approached their sleeping teacher. Water was sloshing around their ankles, the boat was listing dangerously, and they were rapidly approaching the point where no amount of human effort could save them from disaster. In their desperation, they shook Jesus awake, their voices filled with panic and perhaps a touch of reproach. "Teacher, Do you not care that we are perishing?" Jesus opened his eyes and looked around at the chaos surrounding them. He saw his disciples' frightened faces, heard the roar of wind and waves, felt the boat lurching beneath the assault of the storm. But instead of panic or concern, his expression showed perfect calm, as if he were observing nothing more dramatic than a gentle summer shower. Rising to his feet with unhurried dignity, he faced the raging tempest that had terrorized his experienced fisherman followers. What happened next would be etched in their memories forever. Jesus raised his hand toward the storm and spoke with quiet authority, his voice somehow carrying clearly over the din of wind and waves. "Peace, be still." The words were simple, almost gentle, but they carried a power that transformed the very nature of the elements around them. Immediately, the howling wind ceased. Not gradually, not slowly diminishing as natural storms do, but instantly, as if someone had simply turned off a switch. The waves that had been crashing over their boat with such violence smoothed out into perfect calm, leaving the water as still as glass. The sudden silence after the deafening roar of the storm was almost overwhelming, broken only by the gentle lapping of small wavelets against the boat's hull. The disciples sat in stunned amazement, their eyes wide with wonder and a new kind of fear, not the terror of the storm, but the awe that comes from witnessing power beyond human comprehension. They had known Jesus as a teacher and healer, but this was something entirely different. This was authority over the very forces of nature, the kind of power that belonged only to the Creator himself. Jesus looked at his still shaken followers with gentle concern and asked, "Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?" His words were not harsh criticism but loving instruction, an invitation to understand that the same power that had just calmed the storm was always available to them, always watching over them, always ready to provide protection and peace in any circumstance. As they completed their journey across the now peaceful lake, the disciples whispered among themselves in amazement, "Who can this be, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" They were beginning to understand that they were not simply following a wise teacher or even a powerful prophet, but someone whose authority extended beyond the human realm into the very foundations of creation itself. The memory of that night would sustain them through many future storms, both literal and metaphorical. They had learned that divine protection was not just about being rescued from danger, but about having access to power that could transform the very nature of threatening circumstances. Like Daniel in the lion's den, like Elisha surrounded by angelic armies, they had discovered that those who trust in God need never face any situation alone or unprotected. The calm that settled over the Sea of Galilee that night was more than just the absence of storm. It was the presence of perfect peace, the kind of tranquility that comes from being in the company of one who holds all creation in his hands. As they rowed toward shore in the gentle starlight, the disciples began to understand what it truly meant to be safe, to be protected, to be at rest even in the midst of life's most threatening circumstances. This understanding of divine protection and perfect peace found its most beautiful expression in an ancient song, a psalm written by someone who had experienced firsthand the reality of God's sheltering care. The words flowed like honey, each phrase painting a picture of safety and security that has comforted countless souls through the ages. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Picture, if you will, a vast eagle soaring high above mountain peaks, its enormous wings spread wide against the sky. Below, nestled safely in the warm darkness beneath those powerful wings, small creatures find perfect protection from the elements. The wing above them is more than shelter. It is living protection, moving and responsive, adjusting to provide exactly the coverage needed in every circumstance. This is the image the psalmist used to describe divine care, not a static roof or wall, but the dynamic personal protection of a caring God. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him I will trust. These words speak of more than just safety. They speak of a relationship built on confidence and rest. A refuge is not merely a hiding place, but a sanctuary where one can be restored and renewed. A fortress is not just a defensive structure, but a place of strength from which one can face any challenge. When the psalmist declared the Lord to be both refuge and fortress, he was painting a picture of complete security, both defensive and restorative. The psalm continues with a promise that has brought comfort to travellers and adventurers, missionaries and mothers, soldiers and children. Surely he shall deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the perilous pestilence. The imagery here is of hidden dangers, traps that cannot be seen until it is too late, diseases that strike without warning. Yet divine protection extends even to these unseen threats, providing deliverance before the danger is even fully realized. He shall cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you shall take refuge. His truth shall be your shield and buckler. Again, the beautiful image of wings, this time focusing on the soft, warm covering of feathers. A mother bird gathering her chicks under her wings, protecting them from rain and cold and predators, providing not just safety but comfort. The nestlings rest completely secure, surrounded by warmth and the gentle sound of their protector's heartbeat. This is how divine protection feels to those who trust in it, not just safe, but loved and cared for with tender affection. The shield and buckler mentioned here were tools of ancient warfare. The small round shield carried on the arm and the larger body shield that provided broader protection. But the psalmist identified truth itself as this protection, suggesting that those who trust in God's faithful character need no other defense. Truth becomes their armor, reliability their shield, faithfulness their wall of safety. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor of the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor of the destruction that lays waste at noonday. This verse acknowledges that dangers are real and varied. Night terrors that strike when we are most vulnerable, daytime attacks that come when we think we are most alert, hidden diseases that spread unseen, and obvious destructions that devastate in broad daylight. Yet the promise is freedom from fear in every circumstance, not because the dangers are not real, but because the protection is greater than any threat. The psalm paints a remarkable picture of immunity. 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look, and see the reward of the wicked. This is not a promise that difficulties will never occur around us, but that we ourselves will be preserved even when destruction affects others nearby. We may witness troubles, but we need not be consumed by them, protected as we are by divine care. Because you have made the Lord, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place, no evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. The key here is relationship, making the Lord our dwelling place, choosing to live in conscious awareness of his presence and protection. When we dwell in this spiritual reality, our physical circumstances change. Not that we are removed from the world, but that the world cannot ultimately harm what truly matters about us. For he shall give his angels charge over you, to keep you in all your ways. In their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Here is the promise that Elisha's servant saw fulfilled visually. Angelic protection assigned specifically to those who trust in God. These heavenly guardians are not distant observers, but active protectors, instructed to preserve us even from small hurts and minor injuries. The care is both comprehensive and detailed, covering everything from major calamities to everyday bumps and bruises. You shall tread upon the lion and the cobra, the young lion and the serpent you shall trample underfoot. This promise of protection extends to the most dangerous predators and the most venomous creatures. Like Daniel in the lion's den, those under divine protection can walk safely even among threats that would destroy others. The image is not of avoiding danger, but of being preserved within it, of finding that the very things meant to harm us become powerless in our presence. The psalm concludes with God himself speaking, giving his personal guarantee of protection. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. These final verses reveal the heart of divine protection. It is not arbitrary or random, but flows from relationship. Those who love God, who know his character, who call upon him in their times of need. These are the ones who experience his sheltering care. The promise is not just of protection, but of presence. I will be with him in trouble. Sometimes deliverance means being removed from difficult circumstances, but sometimes it means being sustained within them, never alone, never abandoned, never without the comfort of divine companionship. As you listen to these ancient words tonight, imagine yourself wrapped in this blanket of divine care. Feel the warmth of wings that cover you, the strength of arms that hold you, the peace that comes from knowing you are watched over by one whose love never fails and whose power never diminishes. Like the Israelites under their pillar of fire, like Daniel among the lions, like the disciples on the calmed sea, you too are surrounded by protection that is both tender and mighty, both personal and eternal. The secret place of the Most High is not a physical location, but a spiritual reality available to every soul who chooses to dwell there. In this place, fears lose their power, threats become empty shadows, and the heart finds rest in the unshakable confidence that comes from being perfectly loved and absolutely secure. This is the shelter that never fails, the refuge that is always open, the protection that transforms even the most threatening circumstances into opportunities to experience divine faithfulness. In this sacred space beneath the shadow of the Almighty, surrounded by angelic guardians and covered by wings of love, the heart learns what it means to be truly safe. Not safe from every difficulty, but safe in every difficulty, held secure by hands that will never let go, watched over by eyes that never sleep, protected by love that will never fail. This is the promise that echoes through every story of divine protection, the golden thread that connects Daniel's quiet night among the lions to the disciples' peaceful journey across the calmed sea. Rest now in this truth, dear listener. Let the reality of divine protection settle into your heart like warm honey, sweet and nourishing, and completely satisfying. You are not alone in the darkness, not abandoned to face your fears without help, not left to navigate life's storms with only your own wisdom and strength. You are held, you are watched, you are loved with an everlasting love that transforms every night into a sanctuary of peace and every morning into a fresh demonstration of faithful care. The walls of light that surrounded Elisha's city still surround every trusting heart. The angel that shut the lions' mouths still ministers to those who call upon the Lord. The voice that calmed the storm still speaks peace over every troubled soul. This is your inheritance as one who dwells in the secret place of the Most High, your portion as one who has chosen to make the Lord your refuge and your fortress. Sleep peacefully tonight, wrapped in these promises like the softest blanket, surrounded by this protection like the strongest walls, held in these everlasting arms like the most treasured child. For you are safe, you are loved, and you are watched over by the one who never slumbers nor sleeps, whose faithfulness reaches to the clouds, and whose love endures forever. These walls of divine protection are not made of stone or steel, but of something far more enduring and infinitely more beautiful, Imagine, if you will, barriers of pure light that shimmer with colours beyond the visible spectrum, walls that are simultaneously transparent and impenetrable, allowing love and blessing to flow freely while keeping all harm at bay. These are the walls that surround every trusting heart, invisible to human eyes but more real than any earthly fortress. The light that forms these protective barriers is not harsh or blinding, but warm and golden, like sunlight filtered through honey, or like the gentle glow of dawn spreading across a peaceful landscape. It moves and flows with living energy, responding to every need, adjusting to every circumstance, never static but always perfectly positioned to provide exactly the protection required in each moment. This light has consciousness, purpose, and infinite love woven into its very essence. Within these walls of light, angelic beings move with graceful purpose, their forms radiant with reflected glory from the source of all protection. They are not distant, ethereal creatures, but active guardians assigned specific responsibilities for the care and protection of those who dwell under divine covering. Each angel carries the authority of heaven itself, commissioned personally by the Most High to watch over his beloved children with unwavering vigilance and tender care. These celestial protectors are not bound by the physical laws that govern earthly existence. They can be present anywhere instantly, can perceive threats before they fully manifest, and can intervene in circumstances both great and small with perfect timing and unlimited power. They work in perfect harmony with each other and in complete submission to divine will, forming an interconnected network of protection that covers every moment of every day for every trusting soul. Some angels specialize in turning aside the arrows of accusation and discouragement that are constantly being aimed at human hearts. They intercept words of destruction before they can take root in the mind, deflecting criticism that would wound and lies that would confuse. With shields of truth and swords of encouragement, they fight battles in the realm of thought and emotion, ensuring that those under their care can walk in confidence and peace rather than condemnation and fear. Other angels focus on the practical matters of daily life, smoothing the path ahead and removing obstacles that might cause stumbling. They influence traffic patterns to prevent accidents, guide hands to prevent mistakes, and coordinate circumstances to bring about providential timing in countless small ways. Their work is often so subtle that it passes unnoticed, but it is constant and comprehensive, covering everything from the mundane details of daily routine to the major decisions that shape the course of life. Still other angels serve as messengers, carrying prayers to the throne of grace and bringing back answers in forms that human hearts can receive and understand. They whisper comfort in moments of sorrow, inspiration in times of creativity, and wisdom in seasons of decision-making. Their voices blend with the still, small voice of divine guidance, helping to clarify direction and confirm truth in the midst of life's complexity and confusion. The walls of light and their angelic guardians create a sanctuary that travels with each protected soul wherever they go. Home is not a physical location, but a spiritual reality, the constant awareness of being surrounded by love that cannot be diminished and protection that cannot be overcome. In the middle of a crowded city or alone in a vast wilderness, in the midst of celebration or the depths of sorrow, the sanctuary remains intact and the guardians remain faithful. This protection extends through every dimension of human existence. Physical safety is covered, as Daniel experienced among the lions, but so is emotional healing, as hearts are shielded from wounds that would fester and relationships are preserved from damage that would destroy. Mental clarity is protected, as thoughts are kept free from confusion and deception, and spiritual growth is nurtured, as the soul is guarded from influences that would lead it away from truth and love. The walls of light are particularly beautiful at night, when their gentle radiance provides a soft glow that makes sleep peaceful and dreams sweet. Children who have learned to recognize this protection sleep more soundly, their subconscious minds resting in the security of divine care. Adults who acknowledge these walls find that worry loses its grip and anxiety fades away, replaced by deep confidence in the faithful love that surrounds them. Even in seasons of difficulty and trial, the walls remain strong and the angels remain vigilant. The protection does not always prevent challenging circumstances from arising, but it ensures that those who trust in divine care are never overwhelmed beyond their ability to endure. Strength is provided for every demand, grace for every challenge, and hope for every season of waiting. The walls bend but never break, adapting to provide exactly the kind of shelter needed in each unique situation. The beauty of this protection is that it requires no special qualification or achievement to access. It is freely available to every heart that turns toward divine love with trust and sincerity. The walls of light surround the weakest and strongest alike, the youngest and oldest equally, the most confident and most fearful without distinction. Divine protection is a gift of grace, not a reward for performance, available to all who are willing to receive it. As the centuries have passed and countless generations have experienced this supernatural care, certain places and moments have become particularly associated with the visible manifestation of divine protection. Peaceful valleys where troubled hearts have found rest, quiet rooms where desperate prayers have been answered, hospital corridors where impossible healings have occurred, and ordinary homes where extraordinary peace has taken up residence. These sacred spaces carry an atmosphere of the eternal, places where the walls of light seem somehow more tangible and the presence of angelic guardians more perceptible. People who enter such places often speak of feeling immediately calmer, more hopeful, more aware of being loved and protected. The walls of light concentrate their radiance in these locations, creating sanctuaries of peace that refresh and restore all who come seeking refuge. But the most wonderful truth about these walls of light is that they are not limited to special places or extraordinary moments. They surround every trusting heart at every moment, in every location, through every circumstance. The grocery store becomes a sanctuary, the workplace becomes a place of divine presence, the daily commute becomes a journey taken in the company of heavenly escorts. Ordinary life is transformed by the recognition of extraordinary protection. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, take a moment to acknowledge the walls of light that surround you. See them with the eyes of faith, shimmering just beyond the edge of vision, beautiful and strong and infinitely loving. Feel the presence of your angelic guardians, posted at their stations around your rest, vigilant and caring and absolutely reliable. Know that you are held within a sanctuary of divine protection that has never failed and never will. The light that forms these walls is the same light that guided the Israelites through the wilderness, that filled the lion's den with peace, that calmed the storm on Galilee. It is eternal light, unshakable light, light that darkness cannot overcome or comprehend. Within its warm embrace, you can rest completely secure, knowing that you are watched over by love that never sleeps and protected by power that knows no limitation. Let this truth settle deep into your heart as you drift towards sleep. You are surrounded by walls of living light, guarded by angels of infinite power, held in arms of everlasting love. No weapon formed against you can prosper. No scheme designed to harm you can succeed. No darkness can penetrate the light that surrounds you. You are safe, you are secure, and you are eternally beloved by the one who is both your refuge and your strength. In this place of perfect protection, where walls of light meet angelic care and divine love covers every need, the soul finds its true home. Here, in the shadow of the Almighty, beneath wings of unfailing love, surrounded by guardians of infinite power, the heart can finally rest completely. This is your inheritance, your portion, your eternal dwelling place, safe forever in the hands of unchanging love. Yet divine protection reveals its deepest beauty not only on mountaintops of victory, but especially in the valleys of difficulty, those low places where shadows gather and the path becomes uncertain. Even the greenest valleys can sometimes feel dark when we are walking through seasons of loss, disappointment, or fear. But it is precisely in these valleys that divine protection manifests its most tender and personal care, transforming places of potential despair into sanctuaries of unexpected comfort. The valley experience is part of every human journey. We walk along life's ridges, enjoying clear views and easy paths, but inevitably we must descend into lower places where the way forward is less obvious and the terrain more challenging. These valleys might be seasons of grief after the loss of someone precious, periods of uncertainty when important decisions must be made without clear guidance, or times of physical weakness when the body cannot do what the spirit desires. In such valleys, divine protection takes on a quality of intimate companionship that is less visible during easier times. Like a shepherd who draws closer to his sheep when they pass through dangerous terrain, divine presence becomes more tangible, more personal, more immediately comforting when we need it most. The protection that might have seemed abstract or distant during times of strength becomes real and immediate when weakness makes us aware of our need for help. Imagine walking through an actual valley as evening approaches, shadows deepening between the hills, the path ahead disappearing into uncertain darkness. But as you walk, you realize you are not alone. Beside you moves a presence so kind, so strong, so utterly reliable that fear cannot take root in your heart. This companion knows every step of the path ahead, has walked this way countless times before, and carries light that makes even the darkest passages safe and navigable. This is how divine protection works in life's difficult valleys. The path may be hard to see, but guidance is always available. The way may be steep and treacherous, but strong arms are ready to steady every stumbling step. The journey may be longer than expected, but provision is made for every need along the way. What seems like an ordeal becomes a pilgrimage, and what feels like abandonment reveals itself as the closest possible accompaniment. In valleys of grief, divine protection manifests as comfort that comes in waves, perfectly timed to meet each surge of sorrow with exactly the right amount of peace. Memories that might have brought only pain are gently transformed into treasures of gratitude. The ache of loss remains, but it is surrounded by such warm love that it becomes bearable, even meaningful. Hearts learn that protection does not always mean prevention of pain, but can mean the grace to carry pain without being destroyed by it. During valleys of uncertainty, when important decisions must be made without clear information, divine protection appears as an inner compass that points steadily toward truth and wisdom. The external circumstances may remain confusing, but an internal clarity emerges that makes the next step obvious even when the final destination remains hidden. Peace comes not from knowing everything, but from trusting the one who does know everything and who guides each step with perfect love and infinite wisdom. In valleys of physical weakness or illness, divine protection often reveals itself through the kindness of others, the skill of caregivers, and an inner strength that seems to come from beyond personal resources. Bodies may be limited, but spirits are sustained by supernatural grace. Healing may come in the form of restored health, or it may come as acceptance and peace that transforms suffering into a different kind of wholeness. The protection adapts to provide exactly what is needed for each unique situation. Financial valleys, where resources seem inadequate for needs, become places where divine protection demonstrates its creativity and reliability. Provision comes from unexpected sources, needs are met in surprising ways, and hearts learn to trust in a security that is not dependent on bank balances or investment portfolios. the protection extends beyond material needs to include the peace of mind that comes from knowing that every genuine need will be met at exactly the right time. Relationship valleys, where connections with others become strained or broken, reveal divine protection as a source of love that is not dependent on human acceptance or approval. Hearts wounded by rejection find healing in unconditional acceptance. Souls damaged by betrayal discover trust that cannot be shaken because it is founded on unchanging faithfulness. The protection provides both healing for past hurts and wisdom for future relationships. The most beautiful aspect of divine protection in valleys is how it transforms the journey from something to be endured into something that can be embraced. The valley experience becomes a classroom where lessons of trust, patience and surrender are learned in ways that are impossible on level ground. Characters are refined, priorities are clarified, and relationships are deepened in the crucible of difficulty under the covering of divine care. Even in the deepest valleys, where shadows seem darkest and the way ahead most uncertain, divine protection ensures that no soul walks alone. The presence that accompanies every step is not distant or detached, but intimately involved in every moment of the journey. Like a parent walking closely beside a child on a difficult path, divine love adjusts its pace to match our ability, offers encouragement exactly when it is needed most, and provides rest whenever the journey becomes too demanding. The valleys also become places of unexpected beauty for those who have learned to recognize divine protection at work. Flowers bloom in the shadows that cannot be seen from the heights. Springs of refreshing water are discovered in places that seemed barren. Views open up that reveal landscapes of truth and beauty invisible from any other vantage point. The valley experience, rather than being simply survived, becomes treasured as a time of special closeness with divine love. Many who have walked through deep valleys with divine protection as their companion speak of these times as paradoxically precious. Not because the difficulty was enjoyable, but because the intimacy of divine presence during the struggle created memories of comfort and faithfulness that become sources of strength for years to come. The valleys become testimonies to the reality of divine care, proof that protection is not just a theological concept, but a practical experience available to every trusting heart. Tonight, if you find yourself in a valley season of life, take comfort in knowing that you do not walk alone. The same presence that accompanied the Israelites through the wilderness, that stood with Daniel in the lion's den, that calmed the storm for the frightened disciples, walks with you through whatever shadows you may be facing. The protection that has never failed in all of history will not fail you now. Your valley may be a place of healing, where old wounds are gently tended and hearts are restored to wholeness. It may be a place of preparation, where strength is built for future challenges and wisdom is gained for decisions yet to come. It may be a place of revelation, where truths about yourself and about divine love are discovered that could never be learned in easier circumstances. Whatever the nature of your valley, divine protection ensures that it becomes a place of growth rather than destruction, of strengthening rather than weakening, of drawing closer to divine love rather than drifting away from it. The journey through the valley leads not to despair, but to a higher place of understanding and trust. The shadows give way to light, the difficulty resolves into peace, and the heart emerges more secure than ever in the knowledge of divine faithfulness. Rest now in the assurance that divine protection is especially near to those who walk through valleys. Feel the presence beside you, steadying your steps and lighting your way. Know that every valley has an end, every shadow gives way to morning light, and every difficult journey undertaken with divine companionship leads to places of greater beauty and deeper peace than were ever known before. This tender care that walks with us through valleys finds its most beautiful expression in the image of a shepherd watching over his flock. Picture rolling hills covered in soft green grass, dotted with wildflowers that nod gently in the warm breeze. A clear stream winds through the meadow, its water sparkling in the sunlight as it flows over smooth stones toward the distant sea. And scattered across this peaceful landscape, white sheep graze contentedly, their wool clean and their movements unhurried as they enjoy the abundance provided for them. At the heart of this scene stands the shepherd, a figure of quiet strength and infinite patience. His staff is worn smooth by countless hours of use. His hands are gentle but capable, and his eyes constantly scan the flock with watchful love. He knows each sheep by name, recognizes their individual needs and tendencies, and adjusts his care to provide exactly what each one requires for safety and flourishing. This is no distant overseer, but an intimate guardian who has invested his very life in the welfare of those under his protection. The sheep in this flock have learned to recognize their shepherd's voice above all others. When he calls, they respond not from fear but from trust, knowing that his directions always lead to good pastures and still waters. They have discovered that following his guidance brings them to places of rest and refreshment they could never find on their own. His voice carries authority that comes not from harshness, but from proven love, reliability that has been tested through all kinds of weather and circumstances. In the early morning, as dew still sparkles on the grass, the shepherd leads his flock to the choicest grazing areas. He knows where the grass is most nutritious, where the shade will be coolest during the heat of the day, and where danger might lurk despite the peaceful appearance of the landscape. His planning extends far beyond the immediate moment to ensure that his sheep will have everything they need not just for today, but for the journey ahead. The green pastures where he leads them are more than just feeding areas. They are places of restoration and renewal. Here the sheep can eat their fill without competition or anxiety, can rest without fear of predators, and can simply enjoy being sheep under the care of one who understands their needs completely. The grass is always abundant in these places, rich with nutrients that strengthen bones and brighten wool, sweet to the taste and satisfying to the soul. When the flock needs water, the shepherd leads them not to rushing torrents that might frighten or overwhelm them, but to still waters where they can drink deeply without struggle. These quiet pools reflect the sky like mirrors, their surfaces barely rippled by gentle breezes. The water is pure and cool, refreshing both body and spirit. Around these peaceful springs, the sheep can rest in complete security, knowing their shepherd stands guard while they refresh themselves for the journey ahead. The shepherd's protection extends beyond providing food and water to actively defending his flock from every threat. His trained eye can spot danger long before the sheep become aware of it, and his quick action prevents problems before they develop into crises. When wolves appear on distant ridges, his presence alone is often enough to turn them away. When weather threatens, he guides the flock to shelter before the storm arrives. When one sheep begins to wander toward unsafe ground, his gentle correction keeps it safe within the boundaries of protection. The rod and staff that the shepherd carries are tools of both guidance and protection. The rod serves as a weapon against predators, a club that can drive away any creature that threatens the flock. But it is also an instrument of examination, used to gently probe and part the wool to check for injuries or parasites that might harm the sheep if left untreated. The staff with its curved end serves to guide and rescue, pulling sheep back from dangerous ledges or helping them out of thorny thickets where they might become trapped. These tools in the shepherd's hands become symbols of comfort rather than fear for the sheep. They represent protection rather than punishment, guidance rather than harshness. The sheep learn to associate the sight of the rod and staff with safety and care, knowing that these instruments are used only for their benefit and never to cause them harm. Even when correction is necessary, it comes with gentleness and is motivated by love rather than anger. The relationship between shepherd and sheep becomes a picture of the most perfect protection imaginable. The sheep do not need to worry about finding food because the shepherd knows where every good pasture lies. They do not need to fear getting lost because the shepherd's voice will always guide them home. They do not need to be anxious about predators because the shepherd's strength is more than sufficient to drive away any threat. Their responsibility is simply to stay close to their protector and trust in his care. When the flock must travel through dangerous territory, the shepherd adjusts his care to meet the increased need for protection. He may walk more closely among the sheep, his presence more immediately felt by each member of the flock. He may use his voice more frequently, calling out reassurances that keep the sheep calm and focused on following his lead, rather than becoming distracted by the threatening environment around them. Even in the darkest valleys, where shadows hide potential dangers and the path becomes difficult to see, the shepherd's presence transforms fear into confidence. The sheep may not be able to see far ahead, but they can see their shepherd, and that is enough. His familiarity with the terrain, his proven ability to navigate safely through every kind of landscape, gives them courage to continue moving forward, even when they cannot understand where the path is leading. The shepherd's care extends to preparing safe resting places where the flock can spend the night without worry. He chooses locations that offer natural protection from wind and weather, that provide good drainage in case of rain, and that can be easily defended if predators appear. He may even arrange for other shepherds to share the watch, ensuring that protection continues around the clock without interruption. In these resting places, the sheep experience the deepest kind of peace. Fed, watered, protected, and guided by one who loves them more than his own life, they can sleep soundly without fear or anxiety. The shepherd's vigilance never relaxes, his commitment never wavers, his love never fails. Through every season, in every circumstance, under every kind of pressure, his care remains constant and his protection absolute. The beauty of this pastoral protection is that it requires nothing from the sheep except trust and responsiveness. They do not need to be strong enough to fight wolves, wise enough to find good pastures, or clever enough to navigate dangerous terrain. All these needs are met by their shepherd's strength, wisdom, and knowledge. Their part is simply to stay close, listen for his voice, and follow where he leads. As night settles over the peaceful meadows and the sheep gather close under their shepherd's watchful eye, they rest in perfect security. The darkness holds no terrors for them because their protector sees clearly in any light. The night sounds of the wild cause no anxiety because their guardian is stronger than any creature that roams in darkness. They can sleep deeply and peacefully, knowing that they will wake to another day of green pastures, still waters, and the constant care of one who has made their welfare his life's work. This is the picture of divine protection that has comforted countless souls through the ages. To know that we are sheep in the flock of the Good Shepherd, cared for with this same constancy and defended with this same dedication, transforms every aspect of life from anxiety-producing uncertainty into trust-filled peace. We can rest tonight knowing that our shepherd never sleeps, never abandons his post, and never fails to provide exactly what we need for safety and flourishing. The peace that flows from knowing we are under such faithful care settles deep into the soul, creating an inner sanctuary that remains calm regardless of external circumstances. This internal fortress of tranquility is perhaps the most precious aspect of divine protection, for it is here, in the hidden depths of the heart, that true security is experienced. While walls of light and angelic guardians provide external protection, this inner peace creates a refuge that travels with us wherever we go, accessible at any moment through simple trust and surrender. Picture a beautiful garden enclosed within high walls, completely protected from the chaos and noise of the world outside. Within these walls, everything is ordered and peaceful. Gentle paths wind between beds of fragrant flowers. Fruit trees offer shade and nourishment, and a quiet fountain provides the soothing sound of flowing water. This garden exists not in any physical location but within the spirit of every soul that has learned to rest in divine care. It is the secret place of the heart where perfect peace reigns regardless of what storms may rage in the outer world. The entrance to this inner garden is always through the quiet moment of turning attention away from external pressures toward the reality of divine love. In that moment of redirection, the soul discovers that it carries within itself a sanctuary more secure than any earthly fortress, more beautiful than any physical paradise. This inner refuge is not dependent on circumstances being favorable or problems being resolved. It exists as a gift of grace, available whenever the heart chooses to remember its true source of security. Within this inner sanctuary, the worries that seem so pressing just moments before lose their power to disturb. The mind that was spinning with anxiety finds stillness, like troubled waters gradually settling into mirror-like calm. Thoughts that were scattered and chaotic begin to organize themselves around truth rather than fear, around possibility rather than limitation, around love rather than threat. The transformation happens not through effort or willpower, but through the simple act of remembering where true safety lies. This internal peace has a quality that distinguishes it from any tranquility that can be achieved through human methods. It is not the temporary calm that comes from avoiding problems or the fragile quiet that depends on everything going well. Instead, it is a deep, unshakable rest that can coexist with challenges, difficulties, and even genuine suffering. It is peace in the storm rather than absence of storm, security in the midst of uncertainty rather than elimination of all unknowns. The fortress of the soul is built not with stones and mortar, but with truth and trust. Each recognition of divine faithfulness adds another layer of protection. Each experience of answered prayer strengthens the walls. Each moment of choosing faith over fear reinforces the foundation. Over time, this inner citadel becomes so strong and well established that external pressures cannot penetrate its defenses. The soul learns to retreat quickly into this place of safety whenever the world becomes overwhelming. In this inner sanctuary, the heart discovers resources that seem unlimited and inexhaustible. Strength appears when physical energy is depleted. Wisdom emerges when human understanding reaches its limits. Hope springs up when circumstances suggest despair. Love flows freely when relationships become difficult. These resources come not from personal reserves, which can be drained, but from divine supply, which never diminishes. The inner fortress becomes a place of constant replenishment rather than gradual depletion. The peace that dwells in this inner sanctuary has healing properties that affect not only the spirit, but the mind and body as well. Tension that has accumulated in muscles begins to release as the soul settles into trust. Breathing becomes deeper and more rhythmic as anxiety gives way to calm. Sleep comes more easily and is more restorative when the heart rests in awareness of divine protection. The fortress of the soul becomes a healing chamber where restoration happens naturally and continuously. This inner peace also creates space for clearer thinking and better decision-making. When the heart is not agitated by fear or clouded by worry, the mind can function more effectively. Problems that seemed insurmountable from a place of anxiety often reveal simple solutions when viewed from the calm perspective of inner security. Relationships that were strained by tension can be healed when approached from a place of peace rather than defensiveness. The fortress of the soul is not a place of isolation but of connection. From this inner sanctuary, the heart can reach out to others with genuine love and compassion because it is not depleted by its own needs and fears. When we are secure in divine protection, we have emotional and spiritual resources to offer comfort to others, wisdom to share with those who are struggling, and strength to provide support for those who are weak. The inner fortress becomes a source of blessing, not just for ourselves, but for everyone whose lives we touch. Perhaps most wonderfully, this inner peace grows stronger with use rather than weaker. Unlike physical resources that diminish when shared, spiritual peace multiplies when it is extended to others. Every act of trust, every choice to rest in divine care, every moment of choosing faith over fear adds to the fortress rather than depleting it. The more we rely on this inner sanctuary, the more reliable and accessible it becomes. The silence within this inner fortress is not empty but full of presence. It is not the absence of sound but the presence of a voice too gentle to be heard above the noise of anxiety and too loving to compete with the demands of fear. In the quiet depths of the protected heart, divine love speaks constantly in whispers of encouragement, guidance, and comfort. These inner conversations become the foundation of all outer confidence and peace. Time spent in the fortress of the soul is never wasted time. Even a few moments of conscious retreat into this inner sanctuary can transform an entire day. The perspective gained from this place of security changes how challenges are perceived, how relationships are approached, and how decisions are made. What seemed threatening becomes manageable. What felt overwhelming becomes understandable, and what appeared hopeless reveals hidden possibilities. The beauty of this inner fortress is that it requires no special location, no particular time, no external circumstances to be accessible. In the middle of a busy day, surrounded by demands and pressures, the heart can still retreat into this place of peace through simple remembrance of divine love. In the darkness of sleepless worry, the soul can find rest in this inner sanctuary through quiet surrender to divine care. In moments of confusion or fear, the spirit can find clarity and courage by returning to this place of truth and trust. As you settle into sleep tonight, let your heart find its way into this inner fortress of peace. Feel the walls of divine love surrounding your deepest thoughts and feelings. Sense the presence that fills this sacred space with comfort and security. Allow the peace that passes understanding to settle over your mind like a soft blanket, quieting every worry and calming every fear. In this inner sanctuary, protected by walls built of truth and trust, your soul can rest completely. Here, divine love speaks in whispers of comfort, divine wisdom guides every thought, and divine peace guards every dream. This is your inheritance as one who trusts in eternal love, your portion as one who has learned to make the Lord your dwelling place. In this fortress of the soul, you are safe, you are loved, and you are eternally secure. Rest now in this inner sanctuary, where divine protection has built walls that cannot be breached and established peace that cannot be disturbed. Let your heart settle into this place of perfect security, where every need is met, every fear is calmed, and every tomorrow is held safely in hands of infinite love and wisdom. This inner fortress of peace, wonderful as it is, points to an even greater reality that extends far beyond the boundaries of this earthly life. Divine protection is not limited to our years here, but reaches into eternity itself, providing security that transcends time and circumstances that can never change. The same love that guards us through each day and watches over us through each night has prepared for us a refuge that will never end, a home that can never be threatened, a place of perfect safety that exists beyond the reach of every earthly danger. Imagine, if you will, stepping through a doorway from the temporary into the eternal, from the changing into the unchanging, from the uncertain into the absolutely secure. On this side of the threshold, we experience divine protection as a covering that shields us from harm and a presence that comforts us in difficulty. But on the other side, we discover that what we have experienced as protection was actually just a glimpse of our true home, a taste of the perfect security that awaits all who have learned to trust in eternal love. In this eternal refuge, there is no need for walls because there is nothing from which to be protected. No danger can exist in a realm of perfect love. No threat can arise where divine will is the only law. No fear can survive in an atmosphere of absolute trust and understanding. The protection that was necessary in this world becomes unnecessary in the next, not because it has failed, but because it has brought us safely home to a place where protection is no longer needed. This eternal sanctuary is not an unknown destination, but the completion of a journey that begins with the first moment of trust in divine care. Every experience of earthly protection, every answered prayer, every moment of peace in the midst of storm has been preparing the heart for this ultimate security. The walls of light that surround us now are glimpses of the light that fills eternity. The angelic guardians who watch over us today are escorts preparing us for a realm where we will join their ranks in perfect service to infinite love. The Good Shepherd who guides us through earthly valleys is leading us toward pastures that never fade and waters that never fail. The inner fortress of peace that we discover in our hearts is a preview of a place where peace is not an achievement, but the very atmosphere, where tranquility is not something we must create, but something that simply is, as natural and constant as light and air and the rhythm of eternal life. In this everlasting refuge, the questions that sometimes trouble us here find their perfect answers. Why does suffering exist? Because without contrast, joy would have no meaning, and without the experience of being rescued, we could never fully appreciate the wonder of being safe. Why does uncertainty persist? Because mystery creates space for trust to grow, and faith exercised in the face of the unknown develops strength that could never be built through easy certainty. Why do we sometimes feel alone, even when divine protection surrounds us? Because the feeling of aloneness makes the reality of divine presence more precious when it is finally recognized and received. Every valley we walk through here prepares us to appreciate more fully the mountaintops that await us there. Every storm we weather with divine help increases our capacity to enjoy the perfect calm of eternal peace. The eternal refuge is populated not only by divine presence, but by all who have made the journey from temporal protection to eternal security. The great cloud of witnesses who have gone before us has discovered that every earthly experience of divine care was preparation for this ultimate homecoming. Moses, who led Israel under the pillar of cloud and fire, now dwells in light that needs no external manifestation. Elisha, who saw angelic armies on earthly hills, now sees clearly the full reality of which those armies were just a small glimpse. Daniel, who spent one night in peaceful safety among lions, now enjoys endless days in the company of the Lion of Judah, where gentleness and strength are perfectly combined in eternal love. The disciples who experienced Jesus calming earthly storms now sail on seas that are always calm under skies that are always clear, in the company of the one who revealed himself to them as master of wind and wave. David, who wrote of dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, has discovered that the secret place was not a hiding place, but a doorway into open fellowship with infinite love. All who trusted in divine protection during their earthly journey have found that their trust was not misplaced, but was actually preparation for a reality more wonderful than they could have imagined while they lived within the limitations of time and space. This eternal refuge is not a distant possibility, but a present reality that intersects with earthly life in countless ways. Every moment of peace, every experience of answered prayer, every instance of protection from harm is a window opening briefly to reveal the eternal sanctuary that awaits. The comfort we find in divine care here is a foretaste of the perfect comfort that exists there. The security we discover in trusting love now is a preparation for the absolute security that will be ours forever. The transition from temporal protection to eternal refuge is not a dramatic change, but a gentle completion, like a flower that has been growing toward full bloom, finally opening completely in perfect light. The walls of earthly protection do not disappear, but are revealed to have been the outer courts of an infinite temple. The angelic guardians do not leave, but are joined by hosts beyond numbering in the celebration of safe arrival home. The peace that we cultivate in the fortress of the soul becomes the natural atmosphere of eternal life. The trust that we develop through earthly challenges blossoms into the perfect knowledge that comes from face-to-face fellowship with infinite love. Every lesson learned through the exercise of faith in difficult circumstances becomes wisdom that enriches eternal experience. Tonight, as you rest in the awareness of divine protection surrounding you now, let your heart be comforted by the knowledge that this protection extends far beyond tonight, beyond tomorrow, beyond all the tomorrows that your earthly life will contain. You are not just temporarily safe, but eternally secure, not just momentarily protected, but forever held in love that will never let you go. The pillar of cloud and fire that guides you through the wilderness of earthly life is leading you toward a promised land where every promise is fulfilled and every hope is realized. The angels that guard your steps today are preparing you for a realm where you will share their joy in perfect service to perfect love. The peace that calms your fears now is preparing your heart for a place where fear cannot exist, because love is all there is. Sleep peacefully in this knowledge, dear one. Rest securely in the awareness that your protection is not just for tonight, but for always. Not just for this life, but for the life to come. You are held in arms that will never tire, watched by eyes that will never close, loved by a heart that will never change. From this moment through all eternity, you are safe in the refuge that was prepared for you before the foundation of the world. The same divine love that has protected you through every day of your life will continue that protection through every day that remains. And when earthly days are finished, that love will welcome you home to the eternal refuge where protection is no longer needed, because perfect security is simply the nature of existence. There, in that place of endless peace, you will understand fully what you have glimpsed here in part, that divine protection was never just about keeping you safe, but about bringing you safely home to love that will never end. Until that glorious homecoming, rest tonight in the sweet assurance that you are completely protected, eternally loved, and safely held in the hands that formed the stars and know the number of your days. Your present security is guaranteed by your eternal destiny. Your earthly protection is sustained by your heavenly inheritance. Sleep peacefully, protected one, for you are safe tonight and safe forever in the everlasting arms of infinite love.